true meaning of tawakkul is often misunderstood because many people think it simply means sitting back and waiting for things to happen. In reality, tawakkul is a deep state of the heart where a person combines effort with complete trust in Allah's wisdom and decree. It is not laziness and it is not abandoning responsibility. Instead, it is the balance between human action and divine reliance. A person with tawakkul works, plans, tries and struggles, but their heart remains peaceful because they know the outcome is not in their hands, it is in the hands of Allah, who is Al-Wakeel and Al-Alim, the most wise and all-knowing. When a believer truly understands tawakkul, they no longer carry the heavy burden of overthinking every possible outcome. They do not live in constant fear of failure or rejection because they realize that their effort is their responsibility, but results belong to Allah alone. This understanding removes a huge weight from the heart. Many people suffer not because of what is happening to them, but because of what they imagine could happen. Tawakkul breaks this cycle by grounding the heart in certainty that Allah's choice is always better than personal expectation. In daily life, tawakkul is reflected in simple actions. A person applies for a job but does not become desperate or broken if they are not selected. A student studies hard but does not panic about results because they know effort is required and outcome is written. A person faces illness and takes medicine but does not lose hope because healing is in Allah's hands. This mindset does not remove emotion, but it controls chaos inside the heart. It transforms anxiety into calm acceptance while still encouraging action. One of the deepest aspects of tawakkul is recognizing that Allah knows what we do not know. A delay is not always a denial, and a closed door is not always a loss. Sometimes what we want is not what we need, and what we are prevented from may be protection from harm. But we cannot see. Tawakkul teaches the believer to trust the unseen wisdom of Allah even when life appears unclear. This requires humility because it means accepting that human knowledge is limited while divine knowledge is perfect. Tawakkul also strengthens a person during hardship. When difficulties come, a person without tawakkul may feel lost, angry or helpless. But a person with tawakkul remembers that nothing happens outside Allah's permission. This does not mean they do not feel pain, but it means they do not lose direction. Their heart stays connected to Allah, and that connection becomes a source of strength. They continue making dua, continue trying, and continue believing that relief will come in the right time and the right form. It is also important to understand that tawakkul grows with practice. It is not an instant feeling that appears overnight. It is built through repeated experiences of trusting Allah in small matters first, then gradually in bigger matters each time. Not a person relies on Allah and sees how things unfold in ways better than expected. Their tawakkul becomes stronger. Over time, the heart learns to let go of control while still maintaining responsibility. Creating a peaceful balance between action and surrender, worrying does not have the power people think it does. It creates the illusion of control, as if thinking about a problem repeatedly will somehow change its outcome. In reality, worry is only mental noise that consumes energy without, not producing any benefit. In the belief of tawakkul, a person understands that destiny is already written by Allah, and no amount of anxiety can alter what has been decreed. This realization shifts the heart from panic to acceptance, because the believer understands that the pen has already written what will happen, and the pages are not in human hands to rewrite. When a person constantly worries, they often feel as if they are preparing for every possible outcome. But what actually happens is not exhaustion. The mind becomes overloaded with imaginary scenarios that may never occur. This creates stress in the body, restlessness in the heart, and confusion in decision making. Worry does not solve problems, it magnifies them in the imagination. It makes small issues feel larger and future uncertainties feel like present realities. In this state, a person is not living in the moment but suffering in a future that does not yet exist. From the perspective of tawakkul, a believer is reminded not that everything happens within the knowledge and permission of Allah. If something is meant for a person, it will reach them no matter how much they fear it. If something is not meant for them, it will never reach them no matter how much they worry about it. This understanding brings a deep sense of relief because it removes the burden of false responsibility. A person realizes that they are not in charge of controlling every outcome, only in charge of making sincere effort and trusting the result to Allah. Worry also weakens faith over time because it shifts focus from trust in Allah to trust in self-doubt. Instead of relying on divine wisdom, a person begins to rely on overthinking and assumptions. This creates a cycle where the heart becomes more anxious and less peaceful. The more a person worries, the less they feel connected to Allah's plan, even though His plan is always working in the background. Tawakkul breaks this cycle by redirecting the heart back to reliance on the not one who already knows every detail of the future. Many people do not realize that worry is often rooted in fear of loss or fear of the unknown. But in Tawakkul, a believer learns that both gain and loss are part of Allah's wisdom. What is taken away may be protection, and what is delayed may be preparation. Even discomfort carries meaning that is not immediately visible. When a person accepts this, worry begins to lose its grip because the heart stops demanding immediate clarity and starts not trusting long-term wisdom. Practically, when someone chooses tawakkul over worry, their response to challenges changes. Instead of spiraling into fear, they turn toward action followed by surrender. They do what they can, then leave what they cannot control to Allah. This creates a healthy balance where effort is present, but emotional collapse is avoided. The mind becomes clearer, decisions become calmer, and the heart becomes lighter because it is no longer carrying what it was never meant to. Not carry even in moments of uncertainty. Tawakkul teaches that peace is not found in knowing every answer, but in trusting the one who already knows every answer. Worry demands control, but control is an illusion. Tawakkul replaces that illusion with certainty that Allah's plan is more precise, more merciful, and more knowledgeable than any human expectation. Real relief does not come from solving every problem instantly, nor does it come from having a perfect life without difficulties. It comes not from the heart learning how to surrender what it cannot control. Relief begins at the moment a person stops fighting every outcome and starts accepting that Allah is in control of everything. This surrender is not defeat, it is recognition of reality. A person spends so much energy trying to predict, prevent, and manage every situation, but life continues to move in directions that are not always within human understanding. When the heart finally accepts that Allah's plan is greater than, not personal planning, a heavy burden begins to lift. Surrender in the sense of tawakkul does not mean giving up effort. It means giving up the illusion of control over results. A person still wakes up, still works, still makes decisions, still takes precautions, but their heart is no longer attached to anxiety over outcomes. This separation between effort and emotional dependence is where true peace begins. Many people suffer not because they are inactive, but because they are emotionally not over-attached to outcomes they cannot guarantee. When those outcomes do not match expectations, disappointment turns into distress. Surrender breaks this chain by reminding the heart that results were never owned by the individual in the first place. When a person truly surrenders their matters to Allah, they begin to experience a shift in inner pressure. Problems may still exist, but the emotional weight becomes lighter. This is because the heart is no longer carrying the responsibility of, not controlling destiny. Instead, it recognizes that Allah is Al-Wakeel, the one who manages affairs better than any human ever could. This understanding creates a deep inner calm even in uncertain situations. The circumstances outside may not immediately change, but the internal response begins to change significantly. One of the most powerful effects of surrender is the reduction of constant mental struggle. Before surrender, the mind is often in a state of resistance, always trying to force a not specific outcome or avoid a feared one. This resistance creates tension and restlessness. After surrender, the mind begins to settle because it is no longer in conflict with what is happening. Acceptance does not mean liking every situation, but it means recognizing that every situation is unfolding under divine wisdom. This recognition softens the heart and reduces emotional resistance. Relief through surrender also comes from trusting timing. Many people feel stressed because they want immediate, not answers, immediate solutions or immediate change. But Allah operates with perfect timing, not rush timing. When a person surrenders, they begin to trust that delay is not denial and difficulty is not destruction. This trust removes urgency-driven anxiety and replaces it with patience that is rooted in faith. The heart stops demanding instant outcomes and starts believing that what is meant for them will arrive at the right time without being forced. Surrender also transforms how a person not views hardship. Instead of seeing every challenge as a threat, they begin to see it as part of a larger design. This perspective does not eliminate pain, but it gives pain meaning. Meaning reduces emotional chaos because the mind no longer interprets suffering as random or unfair, but as part of a wisdom that is beyond immediate understanding. This shift is what allows the heart to remain stable even when life feels unstable. Over time, repeated practice of surrender builds emotional resilience. Not each time a person lets go of control and witnesses how situations unfold in ways they did not expect but were still manageable. Trust in Allah deepens. The heart learns through experience that surrender does not lead to loss of direction, but leads to clarity and ease. Gradually, the habit of worrying is replaced with the habit of trusting. And the inner state becomes less reactive and more grounded in reliance on Allah. No matter how overwhelming a situation becomes, there is always a reality that remains unchanged. Allah's power is greater than anything a person is facing. Human beings measure problems based on their limited perspective, but Allah is not limited by time, space, or circumstance. What feels impossible to a person is never impossible for the one who created possibility itself. This is why a believer is taught to anchor their heart in the understanding that Allah is Al-Qadir, the all-powerful, who has control over everything that exists and everything that will ever not exist. When a person feels alone in their struggles, it is often because they are only looking at the physical world around them. They see closed doors, difficult people, financial pressure, health challenges, or emotional pain. And they forget that behind all of these layers is a divine system that is fully under Allah's command. Nothing moves without His permission, and nothing is beyond His ability to change in an instant. A situation that appears stuck for years can shift in a moment if not Allah wills it. This awareness brings a deep sense of comfort because it shifts focus from limitation to absolute power. Allah being Al-Wakeel means He is not only powerful but also responsible for managing affairs in the best possible way. When a person tries to carry everything alone, the weight becomes unbearable because human strength was never designed to handle unlimited burdens. But when the same burden is handed over to Allah with trust, it becomes lighter because it is placed in the hands of the one who never tires, never forgets, and never fails. This does not mean life becomes free of challenges, but it means the heart is no longer crushed under the pressure of trying to control everything. Many people feel fear because they believe they are unsupported in their difficulties. Tawakkul changes this perception completely. It reminds the believer that even in moments of isolation, they are never truly alone. Allah is closer than people realize, fully aware of every tear, not every thought, and every silent struggle. This awareness transforms fear into calmness because the heart no longer relies solely on visible support. Instead, it connects to an unseen support that is constant and unbreakable. When problems grow larger in a person's eyes, it is often because Allah has been made smaller in their perception. Tawakkul corrects this imbalance by returning focus to Allah's greatness. A problem does not shrink because it becomes easier, it shrinks because the heart begins to recognize the greatness of the one who can handle it. This shift does not deny reality, but it reframes it. The same situation that once caused panic begins to feel manageable because trust replaces helplessness. Allah's power also brings hope into situations where human logic sees no hope. There are moments in life where every door seems closed, every option seems exhausted, and every path appears blocked. In such moments, Tawakkul teaches that Allah is not bound by the doors people not see. He can create solutions from directions that were never imagined. What appears as the end of a road may actually be the beginning of a completely new path that only Allah can open. Even in emotional pain, the understanding of Allah's power brings healing. Hearts that are broken, minds that are confused, and lives that feel unstable are all within Allah's ability to restore. The believer does not deny pain, but they do not surrender to hopelessness either. Instead, they hold on to the certainty that Allah can transform any condition at any time. This certainty keeps the heart alive with expectation, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. Over time, living with this awareness changes how a person responds to life. Fear becomes less dominant because it is replaced with trust in a power that cannot be matched. Anxiety loses strength because it is constantly challenged by the remembrance that Allah is greater than every difficulty combined. The heart begins to rest, not in the absence of problems, but in the presence of divine power that is always active, and always sufficient patience in the context of tawakkul is not passive waiting. It is an active state of trust, while continuing to believe that Allah's wisdom is unfolding, even when the results are not immediately visible. Human beings are naturally impatient. They want answers quickly, solutions instantly, and relief without delay. But life is not designed according to human urgency. It is designed according to not divine wisdom. What a person sees as delay is often a process of preparation, protection, or elevation that they are not yet able to understand. When difficulties continue for a long time, it is easy for a person to assume that nothing is changing. However, in the unseen reality, many things may be shifting at the same time. A situation may be building strength in the background. Opportunities may be aligning quietly, or harm may be being redirected away without the person realizing it. Patience allows a person to remain steady during this unseen process instead of becoming frustrated by what they cannot immediately perceive. It teaches the heart to trust that silence does not mean absence of action, and delay does not mean lack of progress. One of the deepest lessons hidden within patience is the idea that not everything beneficial comes in the form we expect. Sometimes what a person desires is not what is best for their long-term well-being. A delay may be preventing a harmful outcome, or a hardship may be strengthening a person in ways comfort never could. Without patience, a person may rush toward what they think is good, only to later realize it was not meant for them. Patience protects from this rush and allows divine timing to unfold without interference from emotional urgency. Hardships also carry layers of wisdom that are only revealed over time. In the moment of difficulty, a person may only see pain, confusion, or loss. But as time passes, understanding begins to not develop. What once felt like a setback may later reveal itself as a turning point. What seemed like rejection may actually be redirection. Patience allows a person to stay connected to this unfolding wisdom instead of concluding too early that something is purely negative. It keeps the heart open to meaning that is not yet visible. Another important aspect of patience is emotional stability during uncertainty. Without patience, the heart becomes reactive, shifting between hope and despair, not depending on immediate circumstances. With patience, the heart learns consistency. It does not collapse when things are slow, nor does it become arrogant when things improve. Instead, it remains balanced, recognizing that every state is temporary and under the control of Allah. This emotional balance is what protects a person from extreme highs and lows that drain mental and spiritual strength. Patience also strengthens the relationship between a believer and Allah. When a person continues to not trust Allah during times of delay, even without immediate answers, it becomes a form of sincere devotion. It shows that faith is not dependent on visible results, but on trust in divine wisdom. This kind of patience is not easy, but it is deeply valued because it reflects a heart that is not conditioned by instant gratification, but by consistent reliance on Allah. In real life, patience is tested in many ways. It may come through unanswered prayers, delayed opportunities, prolonged struggles, or not repeated disappointments. Each of these moments challenges a person's trust. But within each challenge is also an opportunity to grow in reliance. Every moment of patience strengthens the inner foundation of faith, making the heart less dependent on immediate outcomes and more anchored in long-term trust. Over time, patience transforms perception itself. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once felt confusing begins to make sense. The heart learns that waiting is not empty time, but meaningful time. In that waiting, something is always being shaped, even if it is not yet visible. Patience turns waiting into worship and transforms uncertainty into a space where trust in Allah continues to deepen quietly and steadily. A person who understands tawakkul does not abandon effort. Instead, they learn how to align effort with trust in Allah through action followed by sincere dua. Many people misunderstand reliance on Allah and think it means simply leaving everything and not expecting change without action. In reality, tawakkul requires both movement and submission. A believer is expected to take practical steps in their life, but at the same time, they are also expected to recognize that results are not controlled by effort alone. Effort is a duty, but outcomes are a trust that belongs to Allah. When a person replaces overthinking with dua, something important changes in their inner state. Overthinking creates pressure, confusion, and emotional exhaustion because not the mind tries to solve problems it cannot fully control. Dua, on the other hand, shifts that pressure from the self to Allah. It becomes a form of communication where a person admits their need, their weakness, and their dependence on divine help. This acknowledgement itself brings relief because it removes the illusion that a person must carry everything alone. Instead of mentally replaying problems again and again, the heart begins to express them in a way that is directed toward the one who can actually change them. At the same time, Islam does not encourage passivity. A believer is still required to act with responsibility. If someone is facing financial difficulty, they must work and seek opportunities. If someone is studying, they must put in effort to learn. If someone is trying to improve their life, they must take practical steps toward improvement. However, the key difference in tawakkul is that these actions are not filled with anxiety about guaranteed results. Instead, they are performed with the understanding that success comes only if Allah wills it. This removes the pressure of needing to control everything perfectly. When action and dua are combined, a powerful balance is created. Action represents human responsibility, while dua represents divine reliance. One without the other creates imbalance. Action without dua leads to arrogance or stress because a person believes everything depends solely on them. Dua without action can lead to stagnation because a person avoids responsibility. But when both are present, life becomes balanced and the heart remains steady regardless of outcomes. Replacing overthinking with dua also changes the emotional experience of waiting. Instead of sitting in silence filled with fear or uncertainty, a person fills that space with remembrance and conversation with Allah. This turns anxious waiting into meaningful connection. Even if the situation has not yet changed, the person has already experienced inner relief. Not because they have transferred their concerns to a higher authority. This does not remove the situation, but it removes the emotional burden of carrying it alone. Dua also strengthens hope in moments where logic sees limitation. There are situations where human solutions appear weak or insufficient. In such moments, dua becomes a reminder that Allah is not limited by human understanding or available resources. What seems impossible in thought can still be possible through divine will. This keeps not hope alive even when circumstances appear closed. Instead of sinking into despair, the believer continues to ask, continues to hope, and continues to trust that Allah can open paths that were never considered. Over time, this habit reshapes the way a person responds to difficulties. Instead of immediately reacting with panic or mental stress, they begin to respond with dua and measured action. The mind becomes less chaotic because it is no longer trapped in endless loops of worry. The heart becomes calmer because it is consistently redirected toward Allah whenever pressure arises. Life still contains challenges, but the internal response to those challenges becomes more stable, more grounded, and more centered on trust rather than fear.